Hey you, welcome back to Secrets with Maeve and the space for the conversations we usually keep to ourselves. I'm Maeve. Today we're talking about something I know so many of us struggle with in silence. 5 secrets men must never tell women or lose her forever. Let's get into it. There are things you hold close, not because you're ashamed of them, but because they matter too much to just throw around. Not because you're playing games or hiding who you are, but because you've learned something most men figure out way too late. Real power isn't about showing everyone what you've got. It's about knowing when to keep your cards close. And the second you confuse being open with being weak, the second you think that spilling everything means you're being real, you've already given away something you can't get back. Not because she's out to get you, but because people, all people, are drawn to what they can't fully see. To the man who doesn't need to explain himself every 5 minutes. Here's what breaks a lot of good men. They think the woman they love needs the full director's cut of their life. Every fear, every doubt, every single thing running through their head at 3 hours in the morning. And look, I get it. We've been told that's what intimacy looks like. That's what closeness is supposed to be. But here's the thing nobody tells you. She doesn't actually need all that. She needs the version of you that's already walked through the fire and came out standing, not the version still wondering if he's going to make it. You think laying it all out there brings you closer. What it actually does is make her start looking at you differently and not in the way you hoped. This isn't about lying to her. It's about understanding something deeper, that some truths are meant to be lived quietly, not announced like breaking news. Some battles you fight in the dark, not under a spotlight. And the man who gets this, he doesn't just protect his relationship, he protects something even more valuable, his own presence. Because once you hand over every unfinished thought, every raw insecurity, every moment of weakness before you've even processed it yourself, you stop being her partner, you become her project. And projects don't make hearts race. They make people tired. If you're done with the surface stuff, the recycled advice that sounds good but doesn't actually change anything, hit that subscribe button. This isn't for everyone. It's for the guys who are tired of being the nice one that nobody really respects. The ones ready to build something real, something solid, no shortcuts and no illusions. Let's get into it. So here's the first one, and it's going to make some people uncomfortable. Don't tell her about the other women who are still sliding into your world. And before you think I'm telling you to keep backup plans or stroke your ego, stop. That's not what this is. This is about understanding something that'll save you so much unnecessary drama. Jealousy doesn't build anything, it destroys. When you mention that your ex sent you a random text, when you casually drop that some girl at work said something nice about your shirt, you think you're being transparent. You think you're showing her she's got nothing to worry about. But what you're actually doing is planting something in her mind that's going to grow roots faster than you can control it. Because now, every time your phone lights up, she's wondering. Every time you're running late, she's connecting dots that don't exist. Every time you smile at a notification, she's writing a whole story in her head that has nothing to do with what's real and everything to do with the door you just cracked open. She doesn't need a running list of every woman floating around your orbit. What she needs is to feel like she's the only one that actually matters to you. And there's a massive difference between those two things. One keeps you constantly defending yourself, explaining yourself, proving yourself. The other, you never even have to say a word because your energy says it all. The guy who's secure doesn't announce his options. He doesn't have to. The way he shows up already communicates everything. His attention, his focus, his choice. It's all already clear. And when she knows she's been chosen, really chosen, without having to compete with ghosts and shadows, that's when real trust gets built. But when you keep reminding her that there's a whole world of women out there noticing you, you're not building trust. You're building anxiety, and anxiety is the death of peace in any relationship. You might think that's just being honest. That's just keeping it real, but that's ego, not wisdom. Wisdom knows when to speak and when to just let your actions do the talking. Wisdom doesn't need to prove its worth every other day. You don't announce you're valuable, you just are. And part of being that guy is knowing what deserves protection, not because you're shady or hiding something dark, but because you're smart enough to know how minds work. Because you understand that her imagination will always create bigger threats than reality ever could. And the man who keeps feeding that imagination, he's the one who loses control of the whole story. Second one, don't tell her exactly how much you make, especially early on. I know this one gets people fired up because we've been taught that honesty is everything, that you got to lay it all out there from day one. And yeah, honesty matters, but honesty without strategy is just chaos. When you put your full financial situation on the table too soon, one of two things happens. You either set a bar she's going to expect you to maintain forever, or you show her a ceiling she's going to spend her time trying to push higher. Either way, you've just put a price tag on the relationship. Now, your worth isn't about who you are when money is not even part of the conversation. It's about a number. And once that happens, you've already lost something you can't get back. The guy who moves with real confidence doesn't flash his bank account. He doesn't need to prove he can take care of things because his actions already show it. He picks up the tab without making it a thing. He handles what needs handling without a parade. He solves problems without announcing what they cost him. And in doing that, he creates something way more valuable than financial transparency. He creates trust in his ability to handle life. She doesn't need to see your pay up. She needs to know that when life throws something at you, you're not scrambling, you're not panicking, you're not performing, you're just solid. That's what actually lasts. And here's where it gets even messier. When you overshare about money too soon, you're inviting opinions you never asked for. Now she's got thoughts on how you should spend, how you should save, what you should invest in, not because she's trying to control you, but because you open the door. You made it a shared conversation before it needed to be one. And now you're not just managing your finances, you're managing her feelings about your finances. That's exhausting. That's a mess you don't need. And it's completely avoidable if you just keep that part of your world to yourself until the relationship has actually proven it's going somewhere real, somewhere stable, somewhere aligned. You think you're being open. You're actually being reckless because money isn't just numbers on a screen. It's power. And when you give that power away before someone's earned it, you shift the whole dynamic in ways you won't even notice until it's too late, until she's comparing you to someone else's situation, until she's questioning moves you make, until the respect that should have just been automatic becomes something you have to keep earning. Don't do that to yourself. Keep your financial reality close until she's proven she values you beyond what you can provide. And I don't mean proven through time alone. I mean through character, through consistency, through showing you she sees you, not just what you bring. Third secret, and this one's tricky, don't tell her every little detail about your past relationships. We've been sold this idea that sharing your full romantic history is how you build real intimacy. It's not. It's how you build comparison. Every ex you describe becomes a ghost in the room. Every story you tell about what went wrong becomes a map of what might go wrong again. You think you're giving her context, helping her understand you. What you're actually doing is handing her a mental gallery of women she now has to measure herself against, not because she's insecure or dramatic, but because that's how human beings are wired. We assess, we compare, we look for threats. And when you paint these vivid pictures of past lovers, you're basically asking her to compete with people who aren't even in your life anymore. The mature man keeps his past where it belongs, behind him. He doesn't pretend it didn't happen. He doesn't lie when asked, but he also doesn't unpack it like it's a documentary series she needs to binge. When she asks, he's honest, but brief. He acknowledges what was without making it sound like a romance novel or a horror story. He makes it clear those chapters are closed, not because they were terrible, but because they weren't right. And that difference matters more than you think, because if you spend too much time talking about how awful an ex was, she's going to wonder why you stayed. And if you spend too much time talking about how great an ex was, she's going to wonder why you left. Either way, you lose. Here's what most guys miss. Women don't ask about your exes because they're just curious. They're testing. Testing to see if you're still hung up on someone. Testing to see if you've actually done the work to move on. testing to see if they're about to walk into something where they're competing with a memory. And the guy who passes that test, it's not the one with the best stories. It's the one who doesn't need to tell them. The one who's fully here, fully present without dragging yesterday into today. That's not withholding. That's wisdom. That's understanding that your value to her isn't in your history. It's in your presence, in your ability to show up for her now fully without the weight of old baggage pulling you backward. And when you protect that space, when you keep old relationships in their proper place, you give her something priceless, a clean slate. A relationship built on who you are now, not who you used to be. And that's where real connection actually happens. Not in the excavation of old wounds, but in the building of something new. Fourth one, and this is where I'm going to lose some of you, don't tell her when you're genuinely struggling or doubting yourself in real time. I know we've been hammered with this message that vulnerability is the ultimate form of connection. And it can be, but only when it's done right. Only when you share it after you've already started climbing out of the hole. Because here's the truth most people won't say out loud. She's not built to be your therapist. She's not wired to hold all your unfiltered chaos and still see you as the strong, stable guy she chose. That's not me being old-fashioned or dismissive. That's just biology. That's thousands of years of wiring that doesn't just disappear because modern culture says vulnerability is sexy. Attraction is built on one thing, perceived strength, not perfection. Strength. The ability to take a hit and stay standing. The ability to face uncertainty without falling apart. And when you unload every fear, every doubt, every moment of weakness onto her while it's happening, you're not building intimacy. You're transferring anxiety now. She's not just managing her own stress. She's carrying yours too. And the weight of that will erode her respect for you faster than almost anything else. Not because she's shallow or doesn't care, but because she needs to believe that when things get hard, you're the steady one, not the one adding to the storm. This doesn't mean you fake it. It doesn't mean you walk around pretending everything's perfect when it's falling apart. It means you process the heavy stuff somewhere else first, with a mentor, a close friend, a coach, someone who's not emotionally invested in seeing you as unshakable. You do the work in private. You figure it out, you take action. And then after you've already started moving forward, after you're already on the other side of it, then you can share what you went through. You can say, hey, I dealt with something heavy recently. Here's how I handled it. That's strength. That's vulnerability from a position of power. That's showing her you're human without making her question whether you can actually handle life. The guy who dumps every fear onto his partner becomes her responsibility, not her partner. And once that shift happens, once she starts seeing you as someone who needs managing instead of someone who manages, attraction fades. It doesn't vanish overnight, but it drains slowly, quietly, until one day she's looking at you with concern instead of desire. And by that point, it's almost impossible to rebuild what was lost, because you can't unsee someone as fragile once that image gets locked in. So handle your struggles like a man, not by pretending they don't exist, but by solving them before they become her problem. That's not emotional suppression, that's emotional maturity. And if you don't know the difference, you're going to spend your whole life wondering why relationships that start strong and cold. Fifth one, and this might be the most underrated, don't tell her your full plan before you've actually started moving on it. This one's subtle, but it's devastating when you get it wrong. Because when you share your big vision too early, when you're talking about what you're going to do before you've done a single thing, you're inviting doubt. Maybe not on purpose, but it creeps in anyway. She starts asking questions, poking holes, playing devil's advocate. And what started as fire in your chest becomes a defensive conversation where you're now justifying your dreams instead of building them. The powerful man moves quietly. He doesn't announce his next play. He makes it. He doesn't talk about the business he's starting. He starts it and tells her when it's real. He doesn't explain the changes he's making in his life. He becomes the change and lets her notice because talk is cheap. And in a world where everyone's got a plan and nobody's got progress, the guy who just executes without the announcement is the one who actually gets respected. Not because he's secretive, but because he understands that results speak louder than intentions. Always have, always will. When you tell her everything you're planning, you're giving her room to project her own fears onto your vision. Maybe she's risk averse. Maybe she's comfortable where things are. Maybe she doesn't see what you see yet, and that's fine. But if you let her fear slow down your momentum, you've just traded your growth for her comfort. And that's a trade you'll regret, because the version of you that plays it safe to keep her calm isn't the version she's going to respect long term. She might appreciate it right now, but deep down, she'll sense you're capable of more. And over time, that gap between who you are and who you could be will breed resentment in both of you. So keep your plans close, build in the dark, work in silence, and when you've got something real to show, when you've made actual progress, that's when you bring her in. That's when you let her see what you've been building. And at that point, she's not critiquing a dream. She's witnessing reality, and there's no argument against reality. There's only respect for the man who had the discipline to make it happen without needing permission or applause the whole way through. Let me paint you a picture of what this guy actually looks like. He's not flashy. He's not trying to be the loudest voice in the room. He doesn't need to announce himself because his presence does it for him. When he walks in somewhere, people feel it. Not because he's performing, but because he's centered. He's not doing masculinity like it's a costume. He's just living it. He doesn't talk about what he's going to do someday. He just does it. And when people ask him how he got to where he is, his answer is simple: consistency and focus. No hacks, no shortcuts, just daily discipline stacked over time until it becomes something undeniable. This guy doesn't tell his woman everything because he's not looking for validation. He's looking for alignment. He's not trying to prove himself every conversation. He's trying to build something that lasts. And the woman in his life feels that. She feels how grounded he is. She feels the purpose driving him. She doesn't need a play-by-play of his day because she trusts he's handling it. She doesn't need to know every doubt he's ever wrestled with because she sees the evidence of his resilience. She doesn't need his full financial breakdown because she's already experienced his generosity, his stability, his ability to lead without panic or performance. And here's the beautiful part. She ends up respecting him more for what he doesn't say than for what he does. Because in a world where everyone's oversharing, where everyone's broadcasting every thought and feeling in real time, the man who's selective, who's intentional, who understands the power of keeping certain things sacred, that man stands out, that man is rare, and rarity creates value every single time. This isn't about being closed off or emotionally unavailable. It's about being strategic. It's about understanding that intimacy isn't built through confession. It's built through consistency, through showing up, through being the man she can count on, even when you're walking through hell on the inside. That's real strength. That's real love. And that's what builds relationships that last. Not because they're easy, but because they're standing on a foundation of respect that can't be shaken by a few storms. Now let's talk about what happens when you ignore all this, when you overshare. When you think being an open book is the same thing as being a good man, you start noticing shifts, small ones at first. She's a little less impressed when you talk about your ideas, a little more critical when you make decisions, a little less engaged when you walk through the door, and you can't quite name it, but something's different. The energy's changed, the vibe's off, and you're sitting there confused because you were just trying to be honest, trying to be open, trying to let her all the way in. What went wrong is simple. You gave away too much too fast. You confused vulnerability with value. You thought exposing every insecurity would make her love you more, when really it just gave her reasons to worry, to doubt, to wonder if you're really the guy she thought you were. And once that doubt takes root, it's nearly impossible to dig out, because you can't unsay what's been said. You can't unreveal what's been shown. The only move left is to rebuild slowly, carefully, through action instead of words, through becoming the man who doesn't need to explain himself because his life backs up everything he is. So if you're sitting here realizing you've made some of these mistakes, don't spiral. Don't beat yourself up. Just course correct starting right now. Stop announcing every plan before you've moved on it. Stop sharing every financial detail like it's public record. Stop rehashing old relationships like they're Netflix episodes. Stop dumping real-time struggles in her lap. And stop telling her about every woman who crosses your path. Just stop. And in the quiet that follows, start building. Start executing. Start showing her through your actions that you're a man of substance, not just words. Because here's the real truth. She doesn't need you to be perfect. She needs you to be solid. She doesn't need you to have everything figured out. She needs to see that you're figuring it out without crumbling. She doesn't need you to be an open book. She needs you to be a man worth reading, someone with depth, with mystery, with strength, that doesn't need explanation because it's obvious in everything you do. And when you become that guy, something shifts. The tests stop, the questions stop, the doubt stops because she's not wondering anymore if you're capable. She knows you are. She's not comparing you to anyone because there's no comparison. She's not worried about your past or your future because your present is so solid, so grounded, so clear that it fills every bit of space. That's the goal. That's the standard. Not perfection, but presence. Not total transparency, but deep trust. Not constant exposure, but consistent excellence. And the man who gets this doesn't just protect his relationship. He protects his peace, his power, his purpose, because he knows that some things are meant to be kept private. Not because they're shameful, but because they're sacred. And sacred things aren't put on display. They're guarded carefully, intentionally, with full understanding that what you protect is what you get to keep. You're not here by accident. You clicked on this because something in you knows there's more available to you, more clarity, more strength, more truth than the watered down stuff being sold everywhere else. And if you're ready to lock in, to actually commit to becoming the kind of man who doesn't need to explain himself because he's already proving it every day, then subscribe. Be part of a community that's done with the noise and laser focused on the work. Real growth, real shifts, no fluff. Let's build this thing. This is your life, your relationship, your reputation. And every single day, you're either reinforcing the respect you've earned or you're chipping away at it. There's no neutral ground. You're either moving forward or sliding back. And the difference between those two paths usually comes down to one thing: discretion. Knowing what to say and what to protect, knowing what to share and what to solve quietly, knowing that the strongest men aren't the loudest ones. They're the ones who don't need to be loud because their lives are already screaming the truth. So next time you're tempted to spill everything, pause and ask yourself, is this building something or just exposing me? Is this making me stronger or weaker? Is this necessary or is it just noise? And if the answer is not crystal clear, keep it to yourself. Work through it. Handle it. And when you come out the other side stronger, that's when you share. Not as a confession, but as proof. Not as a cry for help, but as a story of resilience. That's the man she'll never stop respecting. That's the man who never has to worry about losing her attention because he never gave her a reason to doubt him in the first place. That's the man who moves through life with quiet confidence, knowing his value isn't tied to how much he reveals. It's tied to how much he accomplishes. An accomplishment doesn't need a megaphone. It just needs consistency. You've got the blueprint now. 5 things most men give away without even thinking. 5 places where just a little restraint creates massive respect. And here's the best part. You can start applying this today, right now, this moment. You don't need anyone's permission. You don't need the perfect setup. You just need the decision to move differently, to protect what matters, to build in silence, to show up solid even when everything in you is shaking. Because that's what separates the men who actually thrive from the ones just surviving. The ones who thrive understand that real power is quiet, that confidence doesn't need an announcement, that respect gets earned through action, not explanation. And the second you step into that understanding, everything changes. The way she looks at you, the way she talks to you, the way she trusts you, it all shifts. Not because you're hiding anything, but because you're handling everything. And there's nothing more attractive than a man who takes care of his world without making it everyone else's emergency. So go build, execute, protect what's sacred, and watch how everything responds when you stop asking for approval and start commanding respect just by the way you move through life. That's your power. That's your lane.